price charts for the alt market, right? So the alt market being that it is anything but Bitcoin. So in this trajectory, we can see that the many times during the period of the last 6 years, 7 years or so, in 2014, we can see that there's been negative days, positive days. So the negative days are the red candles, when typically occurs on Sunday nights or prior to the weekend. And all of a sudden you'll see the green candle here just shoot up. And we see this type of right here, where the number 1 is, and then number 2, we sort of call that the sideways movement, where sometimes it goes up, and then a couple weeks after, it goes down. In this view, we're looking at the 1-year periods, so you can see that over the course of 3 years, perhaps, 14, 15, 16, so almost 17, that there's a lot of sideways action. And what does that mean? That actually means it's very boring. So to that effect, you know, a lot of that's when the news media comes out. A lot of governments start talking about Bitcoin or the market itself, and it creates this impression that, you know, this is dead. You know, Bitcoin is dead. It's not going anywhere. There's no value for it. There's no intrinsic value. However, this chart, I want to bring this to your attention, because if you go back to all the way, you know, 2014, maybe even prior to that, you'll see that there's an upward trend movement, and there's growth potential in these assets. So I think it's common knowledge to know of crypto assets and the direction that some of these assets are going, but it's still quite unclear for the most of the population. So how does this chart benefit you? That's the question that I'm asking myself, because I'm asking because of your best interest. So this chart shows that no matter what, in time, which, you know, if you started here way back in 2014, moving all the way up to 2021, what you've done is let time do the heavy lifting, right? And that's so important to understand, because from my experience, and you're talking to someone who has lived through the bear market. I started getting into crypto when pretty much it was a bear market, right after the blow off top for the last bull market, the bull run. So during that bull run, I observed and I spoke with colleagues and tried to understand what was happening in this sphere. But I was afraid to get involved with this technology because of the rumors that I've heard explicitly, you know, stay away, this is bad news, this is, you know, you would have everybody, you know, in the top tiers, you know, all these large organizations telling you about and spreading FUD about this very new cutting edge technology. And I hate to say it, but I'm sitting here 14 years later talking about this new and cutting edge technology. So yeah, I think it caught many people by surprise, including myself. And that's what drew me closer to this. And I started doing my research. So as part of that research and as part of my own personal journey and education into this atmosphere, this what I actually did is I went out and completed a course from Oxford about blockchain. And in the first chapter of that course, they spoke about Bitcoin. Why? Because Bitcoin is the first blockchain that was ever created, and it's relevant to future growth within the crypto assets, within the blockchain world. It's so relevant because that technology is now, once understood, is now going to be evolving, so to speak. So if we look at this chart, and I really do hope, because I don't, I'm just doing this by myself right now, so I'm projecting the screen on here, where it says number 4, it says we are here. Okay, so keep in mind, this report came out about a month ago, right? And what they're doing is looking at where are we in terms of historic value, historic purposes, and where would we expect to be in the coming months and years. So there's going to be a lot of hype, there's going to be a lot of momentum, and keep in mind what I said initially. This sideways movement, the 1, the 2s, and this could go on for 2 years. So the name of the game is patience. That's the first thing I wanted to raise to your awareness is, speaking from experience myself, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day trading action, where yes, there's some profits to be made, but if you're not careful, those profits can be just as easily gone. So, excuse me. So we are here where it says number 4. The trajectory is, so the first number 4, that's where we are. And if you look at the other side of the arrow, in 2021, by the end of this year, possibly beginning, I would say first quarter of 2022, we should see the altcoin market really, really accelerate. So what's happened historically? When things, seem to be accelerating at lightning speed, right to the top, that's when you want to be sort of careful and say, well, maybe should I take some profits or not? Shave off profits off the top first, 5%, 10%, 30%. So you enjoy some of that, and then also you'll see where it goes back down, right? So it's a living and breathing type of technology. You have investors all the time. It's 724 different parts of the world all tuned into this 724. So that means that it can go up, it can go down. It will likely follow the stock market, and what I mean by that is the theme. Us right now, we're in September, so the market so far has been pretty decent for September, considering that in the month of fall, the month of September, October is usually when the reality sets in that, hey, summer's over, it's back to school, back to work, and that type of thing. So you might normally see a pullback. But this year, being in the bull run, the Bitcoin bull run, what I've observed is that we have a lot of rules and regulations that are still being designed, developed by the SEC, for example. We've got court cases pertaining to XRP still being reviewed by a judge. And what that means is everyone knew that this is going to be this big bull run year. What does that really mean, though? Well, including myself, was very excited about this whole market up until perhaps about April. So in life, for my personal journey, when you think you've had it bad, there's always something worse that could happen. So we have to live in a grateful mindset, and that's hopefully what I'm trying to do. And if I look at my portfolio back in April or February, it's a lot better than what it is now. So So you can tell that we kind of went through, a huge dip. However, on the positive side, on the plus side, for those who have not been a part of this market and who have not gotten in or felt like they were left out or they didn't get in early enough, they had the opportunity to invest back in June of this year, because at June this year, it was quite possibly the lowest for some of these altcoins or some even Bitcoin. I observed the same thing last year, June. In 2020, June 2020, Bitcoin was 9 grand US, and it was, going through this probably 3 month sideways action, and it become very boring, right? So what happens either when we become frustrated with the environment, bored with the environment, you kind of look to different things, right? Start living life and going out there and enjoying the sunshine rather than looking at new things that are being launched. So, that happens. But what I want you to keep in mind is that over the next coming few months, as we approach the tail end of 2021, historically speaking, we should see a blow off top for the crypto market, at least by the end of the year, if not going into 2022. And what I mean by that is a huge acceleration, probably between October to December, and then a cool off period. So the acceleration, if you look at the chart here where it says we are here, you may see something like that trajectory, right? Where it starts, life is great, if you're invested, that is. And green candles. Every month we're printing some nice long green candles. And then all of a sudden it's like it starts falling back down. And this is what I've lived through. And it also depends on how much you have invested in this whole thing, right? If you put very minimal investments, then you won't have to worry about the ups and downs, right? I've seen $100 turn into thousands, literally. I've experienced that myself with some of these altcoins. And it's quite the thing to see and understand. So once it cools down, that's where you can actually buy more. But think of it this way. When you're looking at perhaps 1 year, 1 full year of just drawdown prices, it becomes really difficult, extremely difficult to throw money at this, right? Every week, Bitcoin dropped another grand. And that could happen. It may very well happen. And this is why I'm sort of being in tune with what's happening right now for myself and also for you all who I choose to share the information with. So I'm sort of going through this journey again, and I've been through the pits and valleys, ups and downs, and I'm here to talk about that experience because it's not easy to lose a lot of money when you see all of a sudden some guy shows up on TV and all of a sudden the market starts dropping. And everything you've invested, everything you've thrown at this, it's easy to be over leveraged at times. So I'm very humble about that right now that I've, the greed factor affects all of us. And I threw a bit more money into this than I probably should have and lost a lot, right? So how am I planning to get it all back? If I dare say so myself, but I think by being objective, by being patient, by being smart or smarter, let time do the heavy lifting. I can succeed, and we all can succeed, right? So number one, never over leverage. Number two, be patient. If you throw in $1,000 into this thing, don't expect $2,000 next week, right? That's, I've lived through that myself. And then when it doesn't happen, it's easy to be frustrated, a month after. And look at this sideways action. Well, 2-3 years at the beginning. And during those times, that was when some websites were taken down by the U.S. government because of, they had a lot of criminals in there using Bitcoin to buy things and purchase things, and there were a lot of transactions going on in there. So we have to be very careful about that. So there was a lot of sideways action on that, and that's what caused the boring and the dull market. So there's a lot during that time frame. There's a lot of news reports that will come out and say this is bad, this is nonsense, and that's what was happening in that era. However, there was an uptick in 2016, and why was that uptick? There's the Bitcoin halving. So every 4 years, Bitcoin supply gets cut in half. It doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what you think about it. Its supply is going to be cut in half. Right? This is a deflationary asset, folks. So deflationary means that you just can't print more of it. Unlike the fiat, right? Fiat money and dollars, you can easily print 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 7 trillion. That's fine. It's fine. It's quite normal. Just print more money and flood it into the market. But what does that do for you? Today, at roughly after 8 p.m. on September 1st, 2021, what does that do for you? It actually, it'll actually make your future a lot more difficult, because the value of your hardworking dollar has now been cut by a substantial amount. So over the next year, over the next 5 years, that's going to happen more and more. And a lot of top executives from many financial companies around the world just recently came out and reported that, yes, they can definitely see that in 2025 or 2026, that crypto assets, digital currencies, will likely take over the dollar, right? And that's because we are evolving as humans ourselves. We are evolving, we are learning, we are adapting. We've adapted to one of the most crucible moments in history, that being COVID. In our lives that we're living right now, everyone who's alive, no one has ever experienced a pandemic. The last one was 1919 or something like that, right? So this pandemic, we lost many people. We had to print a lot of money. We had to take time off. We lost a lot of money as well. We had to take time off work, and that taught us a great lesson, which many may have forgotten: the time and value for family and close friends or something like that, right? And we took time off to enjoy those times, and now we're learning more about the atmosphere. So this whole ecosystem is very much accelerating towards a peak pretty much at the end of this year and into next year. And also the Bitcoin halving event will occur in 2024. So if you look at the chart, in 2016 there was the halving, and a year after the halving the price started increasing rather rapidly. That's because once the supply is cut, it takes about a year, 6 months to a year, for that shock to basically shock the environment, and everyone realizes, like, oh my goodness, for the last year the supply has been cut, and the mining difficulty has increased, right? The mining difficulty for Bitcoin has increased significantly as compared to before. So we see that. That is the cause for the spike over the next year post the halving. So recall what I mentioned. Every 4 years there's a halving, and the next one would be 2024. The last one was last year, 2020. So we noticed some trends already with respect to Bitcoin. What I do want to focus on in today's short call is Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash was forked from Bitcoin in August of 2017. So this is really extremely important, because what that means is it's like making a copy of one of the best performing assets in the world over the last 10 years. Making a copy of that reigning champion, right? Bitcoin was literally, pennies on a dollar, and right now it's sitting at almost $50,000 US within 10 years, within the span of roughly 10 years. That is significant and mind-blowing for many scientists, academics, and professionals globally. Many, and politicians, by the way, many who believe that this is all made out of thin air and there's nothing behind it, folks. Well, guess what? This is a culmination of technology that has evolved over the past 30 years. So the internet is actually about 30 years old, right? Your email that everyone uses on their mobile devices. I remember when email came out back in the 90s, right? No one ever thought they would be adopting that on a mobile phone, much less for work and stuff, right? So we are on the cusp of this cutting edge technology. And in terms of Bitcoin Cash being forked from Bitcoin itself, what I wanted to draw to you today is the point of illusion, right? The illusion is that Bitcoin is going to be the king forever. Now, that being said, it is going to be the number one in terms of the first asset, the first digital asset, the first blockchain to arrive. However, us as humans, in terms of technology, we evolve. And part of that evolution process is Bitcoin Cash. So Bitcoin Cash, back when Bitcoin was just, was earlier in Bitcoin's life, it was very slow to transact with. So if I wanted to send you Bitcoin right now, guess what? It's going to take an extremely long amount of time for me to do that. So how would Bitcoin be sent using, for all these transactions? I want to go shopping, I want to go online, and Visa is, outperforming me. I might as well stick with Visa rather than use Bitcoin, right? So how this evolution came to play is that the developers realized this. The developers realized that there would be a need for a cash-like Bitcoin. Here, I'm making notes as I write this. So a cash-like Bitcoin. That means you have the value of Bitcoin, but you now are able to use it within a cash framework, right? So what that means is the upgrade that occurred and the fork, the developers took to Bitcoin Cash and upgraded that to make it more efficient, more faster processing times, larger block sizes. And I don't want to get too technical because I don't want to mess it up myself, but it's an evolution, folks. It's an evolution. So when you look at any exchange right now, you look at the price of BTC, you're going to see $50,000 US. That is huge. We can't even begin to, try to afford one. And even if some people can, great. Now you can afford maybe a couple. But remember, Bitcoin Cash is currently at about 700 US, 800 US, somewhere thereabouts. Back in 2017, when it first got forked from Bitcoin, it was roughly 1-to-1. That means that, remember, back in 17, I recall the summer of 2017, Bitcoin being about $3,000 US. When Bitcoin Cash was forked and created in August, I think it shot up to roughly about, $3,500 US, right? What happens in many coins is it goes up, comes out the gate running, and all of a sudden it just sort of dwindles down, right? So no matter which cryptocurrency crypto asset you're interested in, it's all relevant to Bitcoin, right? This is the breakthrough. So the breakthrough is Bitcoin, and the breakthrough is the blockchain itself, right? So Bitcoin Cash. So I want to draw your attention to something here as we continue this discussion. Bitcoin, since its lifespan, since its beginning, it was thought of to be used as for many different things, and payments are one of them, of course. Why? The reason why is because Bitcoin was looked at as a store of value. Now, over the years of its own evolution, it's more reliant and it's more looked at as the store of value rather than for transacting in your daily transactions, right? You're not going to go to Walmart and say, hey, you know what, do you accept Bitcoin? Because you're going to be probably sitting there for a few minutes while they get their payment, right? So this is the evolution I spoke of. Bitcoin Cash has faster acceleration times and could be most appropriately used for spending as cash, right? Think about it as you take a $20 bill out of your purse or wallet, drop it on the table, and that's it. Keep the change. Move forward, right? So in that aspect, we look at what is the current value of gold, right? What is the value locked into gold right now, the gold market? And what is the value of the cash market? So the gold market currently is rated at about $10 trillion US. So I just actually switched screens here. The gold market is currently at $10 trillion US, right? That is the value of gold. Bitcoin is looked at and being adopted as the gold 2.0, so a digital version of gold because of its deflationary properties, right? Every 4 years, that supply gets cut in half. The next halving is going to really be, something, right? We are only in 2021, and in 2024, early 2024, we should see another halving of Bitcoin, which will cut its supply by half. That's 50% decrease in its supply output. And currently the total market cap of all cryptos is 2.2 trillion. So Bitcoin itself commands almost 1 trillion right now. And if you notice on my screen, you'll see it's doing pretty bad. I would say pretty bad in comparison to Ethereum. Ethereum is considered, at least it was considered, an altcoin. Ethereum is the next $1 trillion token, especially as we go into the Ethereum 2.0 and due to the EIP upgrade, which makes that asset a deflationary asset as well. So we're going to see a lot of good things happen with Ethereum in terms of the price. And I do have some predictions. I might as well say it now. I think Ethereum is definitely going to work its way past 10K US within the next 6 months. Some say 20K, but I'll be conservative on that. We never know what could happen, like something like Ethereum or Cardano. The governments of the world can come out and say, hey, guess what? You guys are not a security, or you are security, and therefore you need to comply with these rules and regulations that we have for you. So that will tank the price, right? So with Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, it's nobody's going to come to Bitcoin Cash and say, I'm sorry, I think you're a security. Because who's the head of Bitcoin Cash? Bitcoin Cash was a copy of Bitcoin. Until this day, nobody knows who created Bitcoin. So think about that, right? Bitcoin was created. So the government, what they can do is go after an exchange that holds Bitcoin or your Bitcoin, go after that exchange and say, we demand that we know who you are through compliance, right? And so going back to Bitcoin, Bitcoin is at what, 48,646 US, right? It's almost back to over $1 trillion. It's not there yet, but Ethereum is gaining momentum. So we've got a race that's going on. So Bitcoin, as being the gold 2.0, is looking at the $10 trillion gold market as a store of value, that is, right? So as the wealth is going to be passed on from generation to generation, the baby boomers are passing wealth on to their kids, and those kids who will have kids of their own will pass on wealth to the next generation. That wealth, my folks, is going to be stored in the digital store of value, such as Bitcoin. And when we talk about cash, what does that mean to you, right? Everybody wants more cash. Well, yeah. So now you need more cash in circulation, right? So the cash market has an approximate 100 trillion value assigned to it. Currently, Bitcoin Cash, right? It's at number 15, 655 US. Yeah, it actually went down. So it's only 12 billion. So think about that. Currently, Bitcoin Cash is 12 billion, and it's going after $100 trillion market. What do you think is going to happen to the price of Bitcoin Cash when it decides to explode, especially knowing it should be around the $48,000 mark at today's prices, right? But all the attention is going to Bitcoin, right? If you want to store your money and your wealth for a long term, great. Bitcoin is awesome. But what I wanted to speak on is really take a deep dive into Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash has the same properties as Bitcoin, but with an upgraded or more evolved technology. So if we look at Bitcoin Cash and the schematics here, sorry, one second. The market cap is roughly 12 billion. That's the current price right now, 657. Here, it's the supply of Bitcoin Cash is 21 million total supply. Here it is. Right, so let me zoom this up a bit. Okay, yeah, so total supply of Bitcoin is 21 million. The total supply of Bitcoin Cash is 21 million. The circulating supply of both is roughly the same, right? Out of this number, so out of 21 million for Bitcoin, probably about 5 million Bitcoin was lost. And that's why you see people trying to dig up their garbage or the city garbage for the last 10 years. They threw out a hard drive that contained some Bitcoin, like, 10,000 Bitcoin or 7,000 Bitcoin. I heard a story. But anyways, that's real life. So what do you think is going to happen with the price of Bitcoin Cash, currently at 657 US, right? Nobody cares about it right now. But this is like buying empty land that is going to be something in 5 years, 10 years, right? An empty lot of land. So circulating supply of Bitcoin Cash is 18,834,000 roughly. That's circulating. I don't know how many of that is lost. But so Bitcoin Cash was forked in August 2017. At that point, I don't think, you would have a lot of people losing their Bitcoin Cash, like especially the millions, back in 2008, 2009, when Bitcoin just first came out on the scene, fresh on the scene. Sure, you probably needed 1 million Bitcoin to buy something, if anybody would even accept it or saw value in it. Now that people are seeing value in Bitcoin, that's awesome for anybody who buys Bitcoin Cash, because for anybody who buys Bitcoin Cash, they're buying it because they're looking at that as literally as buying Bitcoin, right? Except it's more suited for for cash purposes. So El Salvador is the first country to adopt Bitcoin as the legal tender. That's an amazing achievement for the fact that they want to innovate. They want to innovate faster than other countries, right? So today the SEC chair came out and spoke to counterparts in Europe, mentioning that, hey, we need to be together, we need to be aligned on the regulation for crypto assets and such. However, that's fine, but every country is looking for competitive advantage, right? So this is why El Salvador said, hey, you know what? We're going to make Bitcoin our legal tender. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to notice that there's going to be bumps, hills and valleys, and you're going to see that, maybe we need to adapt that strategy. Great for a first start. Yes. We want to be the first country to make history in doing so. But I guarantee you, in everything in life, there's an evolution process, right? They may very well end up at a point where they adopt Bitcoin Cash, because why? It contains faster transaction abilities, right? So I'm not going to wait there for 5 minutes to pay for my coffee, while it gets verified on the ledger and, oh yeah, great, now I receive payment, you're free to go. No, I want something quick. I want something with, that contains a store of value. Remember what I said? Bitcoin Cash was forked from Bitcoin, so that means that it also has that store of value appeal to it, right? Not only that, we can actually, sure, you want some, how much do you want for this, sandwich? Okay, great. I can send that money to you, right away. Pretty much. So this circulating supply is dwindling. Institutions like, for instance, PayPal recently announced that they will allow crypto trading in the UK. So if you log into your PayPal account, you can now buy crypto assets in the UK. I don't think it's available in Canada yet, which is where I'm broadcasting from. However, it is now available in the UK, and Bitcoin Cash is one of those assets. So they made available Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash, and possibly Litecoin, right? Litecoin, I know you might want to think, well, why don't I talk about Litecoin? Well, Litecoin is exactly that. It's a Litecoin. It's probably got about 80 something million supply. It's got a lot more total supply out there. So the value of that, you're not going to see that one jump up too high. You will still see everything rise as as Bitcoin lifts, all boats will rise, right? But remember, Bitcoin Cash was at one time 1-to-1 to Bitcoin or thereabouts. That means that puts this, if I buy one for $657, Bitcoin Cash right now, maybe I wait for the adoption, right? It could probably take a year, 12 months, maybe 6 months, maybe even 2 years. But eventually, as we adopt, as we learn more about this ecosystem, learn more about these new technology, we'll realize that, hey, you know what? There's more value in Bitcoin Cash. That is actually supposed to be the Bitcoin, the real Bitcoin, and some may say that. But at least in terms of cash, so that's fine. great respect to Bitcoin itself. It's done amazing things. I definitely wish I had more myself, but you can't be greedy in this market because it'll just take everything from you. So for those who feel like they've left out and you want to own some Bitcoin, my suggestion is, and it's not financial advice, but my suggestion is look at Bitcoin Cash and do your own research. It's the same supply. It's deflationary, which means that every 4 years that supply is going to get cut in half, right? So as we move forward, every 4 years, this is going to yeah, here it is. July 22nd, 2024. So right now we're 4 months away from 2022. Before you know it, we're going to end up in 2024. We're going to be looking at the Bitcoin halving, and we're also going to be looking at the Bitcoin Cash halving, right? So Bitcoin Cash block reward halving countdown. $12 billion market. So as I mentioned before, the cash market, all the cash in the world put together is roughly 100 trillion, right? Why is that important? Because you've seen some countries, their fiat dollar, they're not using that anymore. Venezuela, Zimbabwe, all due to the fact that their inflation has gotten so high, it does not make sense to pull out a wallet full of some paper money and go buy a loaf of bread. It just does not. And it's the same for you and I, right? In North America, we're going to look at this and say, why am I having to walk around with even more cash that's not really getting me anywhere, right? The bills are getting higher. Cost of living is getting higher, especially post-COVID. So don't let anyone fool you. Look at what's happening around the world. There's a lot of disruption, and Bitcoin was created based on math, based on cryptography, right? So it's extremely secure. It's got a huge network of miners that support it. And speaking of miners, that moves on to the next chapter. The miners that are currently stationed, geographically positioned around the world, are currently heavily focused on Bitcoin mining. And hence, we see their costs are also going up. So as the supply dwindles, as the supply gets cut in half, the value goes up, right? But it becomes very difficult to start to mine Bitcoin now because it's quite expensive, right? It's very mathematical oriented. It's complex. So if I was a miner, I would like to take that same mining equipment that I have and mine Bitcoin Cash, right? Especially knowing that, if I breathe that ecosystem, I would know that the $100 trillion market and we're at $12 billion. Sure, let me take half my equipment and start mining Bitcoin Cash. Now, what does that do? Especially before the next countdown, as you can see here, it's going to cut in half. The supply is going to get cut in half in roughly mid-2024. You're only going to get, for every 210,000 blocks, the coin reward will decrease from 6.25 to 3.125. Right? What's going to happen the next 4 years after that? Right? In 2028, take 3.125 divided by 2. That's what you get. what is that going to do to the value of this Bitcoin Cash? You know, you could literally buy a few right now, or some, piece of one, depending on where you live. I'm not sure, but you can definitely buy one. Now, the key I mentioned at the top of the call is patience, right? We need to have patience in this and not rush it. There's a lot of activities going on. There's a lot of day trading, and you can make this money, you can make that. And you hear a lot, and you will hear more of that, especially as we approach towards the ending of this year, when things may go up and may not. You have a lot of people saying, "Hey, I can make you a lot of money." So look out for things like that. Scammers on Instagram, scammers on YouTube, asking you to send your Bitcoin or send your Bitcoin Cash or send any type of crypto to them, claiming that they will double it in a week or so. Those are, to me, those are scams, and you have to be very careful of that. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I hope this was useful to you, and you enjoyed hearing me discuss about the crypto market, Bitcoin Cash in particular, and why I believe it's really a relevant crypto asset. And in terms of the altcoin market, it's been great. It's been, ups and downs. But now that Bitcoin is sitting at around 48,000, as you can see from this chart here, it's sort of, Ethereum is doing better than Bitcoin. You'll see things like that happen in the market. Sometimes it'll get boring. It'll get extremely boring, and that's when you take some time to learn about the market, to understand what it is you're putting your money into, and also know that things happen in cycles, right? So there's a season for everything, and so too will come Bitcoin Cash, for example. So here we have, this is what the trading charts kind of look like, and I'm going to click on this for a second. So these are the Bitcoin monthly returns over January through December, right? It sort of gives you an idea at the bottom. 2013, you have, in December 2013, you had some negative 32% there. So then sometimes you have green, and then November. September, if you look at September, no matter what, it's been kind of red, So these are the cooling down periods, right? Don't get discouraged, because this is your opportunity to buy. So keep a close watch for September, and things may start heating up in October, definitely in November, and then sometimes even in the Christmas season. It can continue, I would say, continue that momentum. If we go back to January here, sometimes in like 2020 January, okay, we had a 29%, great. August is, typically, what are some of the key indicators here? 69, so May, springtime, right? So we are going into a period where it's going to probably reach a pinnacle. Now, Bitcoin is currently at 48,000 US. We, some analysts that I work with expect that to roughly hit about 150,000 thereabouts. And that's only a 3x for Bitcoin. For Bitcoin Cash, if Bitcoin itself is 150,000 US, Bitcoin Cash should be, roughly 3-5 grand US. So look at that price from where it's at today. That's almost a 5x or something. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, these are what I subscribe to, and these are what these channels are like, right? If I choose to, on any given day, I can look at a chart like this. Okay, yes, this one says that we already did it. It went up to 14%. Great. That one hasn't come back yet. Yeah, ETH. I'm going to go back down to Chainlink. Chainlink is another great crypto to have. So here's a chart that this is sort of trading, right? You see what happens here from June to August. It's literally dull. It's literally boring. People are in tears. They're like, "Why? What did I invest in?" You know, that's obviously if you're over leveraged, right? But if you bought all the way down here, right, mid-July, this is a cup and handle. So this is basically what it's telling you is that this is going to go from $29 to $40. Literally within, it could happen within a week, you know, within the next week or two. As we approach mid-September, we probably should see a $40 chain link. And then everybody would be wishing that they bought it here, including myself. So, you know, it happens. The market comes in cycles, so don't get discouraged. But yeah, that's what I wanted to share today. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream, and maybe with your feedback, I'll try to give some more inputs as we move forward in this journey together. So thank you so much. That's it for now. All right, so talk, Telegram. Okay. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much. Peace out.